Pleased to introduce today to you all Professor Ronald Harden, world-renowned expert in medical education. Professor Harden has developed and pioneered many educational techniques, learning assessment tools and curriculum planning, and is the editor of the Journal of Medical Teacher and the General Secretary and really heart and soul of the Association of Medical Education in Europe, or AME. So we're pleased to take a little bit of his time before his talk to talk a little bit and chat a little bit about education. So welcome, Professor Harden, to Singapore.
Delighted to be here with you.
Great. Well, maybe we'll start by saying a lot of our faculty have gotten a lot of interest in doing medical education research and doing it in a formalized way. Maybe tell us a little bit about how you got started on this.
It's an interesting story. I was a teacher at the University of Glasgow in the medical school there, and my interest was endocrinology. So I was obviously teaching in the endocrinology course. And one day I decided to give the students the end of course examination, the multiple choice question paper examination. This was on day one of the course. And to my astonishment, there was a huge spread of marks. Some students got very little performance, others did very well in the paper. And it seemed to me here was a major challenge for us as teachers. How could we cope with this lecture course, students with this broad range of ability? And it seemed to me there was a need to look at teaching more seriously. Indeed, why were we giving lectures? And were the lectures appropriate? And was there a need for more research in this area? So this got me interested as an endocrinologist, and gradually became more interested in medical education more generally.
Were there very many role models for you at the time?
Well, the professor of medicine at that time in Glasgow, Sir Edward Wayne, himself was a great teacher. He was one of these old professors of medicine who knew everything. And in fact, he actually insisted all the journals for the library went through his desk first, so that he knew more than anyone else in the staff. But he was a great model and was himself a great teacher and was interested in teaching. And I learned also from the professor of surgery at that time, Sir Charles Illingworth, where I was working as a junior doctor, knew the name of every single student, 180 students in the class. And it made me realize how important it was to establish identity and for students to be appreciated by their staff.
Well, maybe you could share with the group where you get some of your insights into what sorts of research projects that you've chosen over your career.
Well, I think one of the things that I became interested in was the assessment of students' competence. Way back in the 70s, the clinical examination was the key element in the passing or failing in the student's final assessment. And it seemed to me that the way we did it left a lot to be desired. It depended very much on the cases they were seeing. It depended very much on the examiners who they had fortune or misfortune to be faced with. And it seemed to me there was a need to look more objectively at the clinical assessment. And that was when we introduced the objective structured clinical examination. But I did a mini experiment first. I took a standard short case examination and we videotaped it. And then I got 14 all experienced examiners to mark the short case examination. And we found, perhaps not unexpectedly, quite a wide range of views. But what was even more worrying was we got the same examiners to mark it 3 months later. And this showed, again, quite a significant variation even between the same examiner. So it was not just the hawks and the doves, but even within the same examiner differences. And it seemed to me we needed an examination that was fairer to the students, remove some of the biases from examiners, and also tested a wide range of competencies. So that was what got me interested in this objective structured clinical examination.
Right, and I think that probably every medical school in the world uses an OSCE in some way as part of their educational tools. And I mean, how that must have did that surprise you that it would be taken off so well? And
well, I didn't think about that at the beginning, but it certainly has been very interesting to see how it has spread. And I think that to some extent is a measure of the, I think, success of any tool if it can be generalized outside the immediate area. One of the things that I think gave me most satisfaction was that the police force in the UK, oddly enough, it seems a very different area, but they had a similar problem. Their national examination to promote from sergeant to inspector in the police force was a written examination. Right. And they said, but look, what we need is something that looks more at performance. And they'd heard about the OSCE, I don't know how, but somewhere around, they'd heard about the OSCE, and they came along and they watched several exams and said, that's exactly what we need to do. So they developed an OSCE for the police force, because it's exactly the same types of competencies. It's how do you communicate, how do you take evidence, how do you make decisions, how do you solve problems. So they developed an exam, they called it the OSPRI, Objective Structured Performance-Related Examination, which even today is still the key assessment in the police force. In fact, the Inspector Morse, which is one of these fictional television stories, in one episode there, the sergeant says, look, I have got to go in, prepare for my OSPRI exam. So it's even in the television. So I think it's the fact that it has been adopted widely, I think is a measure of its flexibility. And I think one of the advantages of the approach is that people can adapt it to suit their own individual and often very different requirements.
Right, that must be tremendously satisfying for someone have that kind of impact over just all over the world like that. Yes. What do you think are the emerging trends in medical education? What's happening in the world of education and research and training?
I think it's an exciting time, and if one looks ahead, and that's what I'm going to be doing in the next meeting at the ATMEC conference, looking ahead. And obviously technology has a large role to play. But what my argument is that is just a tool. What we're trying to do, and I think one of the things I'm going to be arguing is we need much more collaboration in the future. The notion of one school working on their own, developing their own learning program, is really not sufficient. We need international collaborations, working together between different professions, between the different stakeholders, the patients themselves contributing to the education program, students contributing, the dean and all of the staff. We need the different professions collaborating. So I think collaboration is going to be much more. And I think another thing in the future, looking at the students, back to my original comment about the students learning their endocrinology, I think we're going to see students being able to learn much more according to their own personal needs, with much more an adaptive learning program. So the students will find the learning methods appropriate to their own needs, rather than having to fit in with whatever is provided to them.
Just like medicine is going to personalize medicine, really going to personalize education.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, great. Thank you very much for sharing a few moments with us. Appreciate you also coming to give us the talk here at AMEI, and best wishes for you in this new year, and hope to see you again here in Singapore soon.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. I think medical education can be great fun and excitement, and I look forward to this visit with you.
Great, thank you very much.